A band so popular in Japan that the scenes outside their concerts looked like Beatlemania reborn. A live album recorded in Tokyo, never even intended for American ears, that somehow became one of the greatest live rock records ever made and went triple platinum in the US. I Want You to Want Me. A #1 hit. Arenas sold out worldwide. A founding member walks out the door. Albums that land with a thud. A comeback built not on their own songs but on material written by outside writers, which fans said felt like watching someone else wear the band's face. Then, decades later, the original drummer quietly stopped touring, replaced by the guitarist's own son, while the band kept using the name, kept playing the shows, kept cashing the checks. This is the story of how 4 kids from Rockford, Illinois stumbled into one of the most unlikely explosions in rock history, and then watched it slowly come apart. A band that hit the absolute peak in the most unexpected place on earth, and never quite found it again. But to understand how it all fell apart, we have to go back to the beginning. Rockford, Illinois. 1973. Not exactly where you'd expect a rock legend to be born. It's a mid-sized Midwestern industrial city, the kind of place where the idea of filling arenas worldwide sounds like something that happens to other people. Rick Nielsen had been kicking around the music business for years, bands called Fuse and Sick Man of Europe, chasing something that never clicked. Eccentric, obsessive, brilliantly weird. The kind of musician who played a 5-neck guitar on stage. He was the architect, the visionary who knew what this band could be before anyone else did. Robin Zander was the voice. Young, strikingly handsome, with pipes that could shatter glass and melt hearts in the same breath. The frontman, the face on the poster, the teen idol who'd make Tokyo lose its mind. Tom Petersson on bass was the craftsman, the quiet, steady counterpart to Nielsen's chaos. And Bun Carlos behind the drums completed the picture, deadpan, cigarette dangling, sunglasses on, looking like an accountant, playing like a machine. Together they built something with no real precedent. Beatles-style pop melodies smashed into hard rock guitars. Bright, hooky, immediately lovable, but with real bite underneath. Power pop before the term existed. They signed with Epic Records in 1976. 2 albums landed in 1977, the self-titled debut and In Color. Critics noticed. The live show was electric, visually wild, built on the jaw-dropping contrast between Zander's classic good looks and Nielsen's gloriously unhinged stage persona. There was one problem. America didn't care. Singles struggled to chart. Radio ignored them. Epic Records got impatient. The band ground through dates, built a cult following, did everything right, and the mainstream kept not coming. Not here, but halfway around the world? Japan had completely fallen in love with Cheap Trick. Japanese audiences discovered them through imports, word of mouth, sheer grassroots devotion. Something about the Beatles' influence, the melodic precision, the theatrical energy. It connected in Tokyo in a way it hadn't in New York or Chicago. The reception was overwhelming. Screaming. Devoted. Surreal. And right there, in the gap between massive in Japan and invisible at home, the seeds of everything were planted. Even in the beginning, that pressure was already building inside the band. And it would only grow. Then came Budokan. 1978. The Nippon Budokan Arena, Tokyo. A concert recorded for a live album, initially intended only for Japan. A souvenir for the fans who'd already made them stars there. Nobody expected what happened next. Cheap Trick at Budokan captured a band utterly on fire. The crowd was rapturous. Robin Zander magnetic. Rick Nielsen electrifying. Hook after hook after hook, delivered with a precision and energy the studio albums couldn't fully contain. Import copies trickled into the US. Fans passed them around like contraband. Radio stations started playing tracks. The buzz built organically, unstoppably. Epic Records released Budokan internationally in 1979. It was a phenomenon. Triple platinum in the US. I Want You to Want Me, the live version caught on that Tokyo stage, hit the top 10. Surrender became an anthem that sounded like it had always existed. Cheap Trick went from cult act to international rock stars almost overnight. Arenas. Worldwide. The crowds in Japan still looked like Beatlemania. Because the comparisons to the Beatles were everywhere. The melodic sophistication, the irresistible pop instincts wrapped in rock muscle. Their popularity peaked between 1978 and 1980 in a way that was almost impossible to sustain. But beneath this triumph, the machinery was already straining. Dream Police in 1979 hit number 6 on the Billboard 200. The title track charted. Voices charted. On paper, success. In reality, the touring was relentless, Epic Records was pressing harder for hit singles, and 4 very different personalities locked in close quarters for months at a time were starting to crack. What fans didn't see was the cost. The identity question that had no clean answer. Were they a pop band? A rock band? A live act that could never be adequately captured in a studio? The pressure to replicate Budokan's lightning-in-a-bottle magic on every subsequent album was impossible. And everybody knew it. The real price was building quietly beneath every arena show. The apex was 1978 to 1980. Budokan alive in the room. Zander commanding the front of the stage. Nielsen hurling guitar picks into the crowd by the hundreds. Carlos holding the whole thing together. Petersson anchoring the low end. Tens of thousands of people losing themselves completely. For a brief, shining window, they were one of the biggest rock acts on earth. But that moment of glory was also the beginning of the end. Because while they looked unstoppable on stage, everything off stage was cracking. 1980. The dream started visibly coming apart. Tom Petersson quit. Not a minor shuffle. A founding member. A co-architect of the entire sound. Gone, leaving amid internal tensions that the relentless success machine had ground to a breaking point. The touring pressure. The unequal spotlight. Zander and Nielsen drawing all the attention while others felt like hired hands in someone else's story. The label demanding hit after hit on an impossible timeline. Petersson was replaced by John Brandt. And here's the truth about replacing a founding member in a band built on chemistry. It's never just a personnel change. It's a signal. Something fundamental has shifted. And everyone, fans, industry, the band itself, felt it. The albums that followed saw sales decline sharply. All Shook Up in 1980 received a mixed reception. Critics said the band had lost direction. And the culture wasn't helping. New Wave and MTV Pop were reshaping everything, making Cheap Trick's sound feel like it belonged to a fading moment. Epic Records pushed harder for commercial singles. Internal morale weakened. The arena dominance was over. They kept touring because touring pays the bills. But they were no longer running on cultural momentum. They were surviving. And it was starting to show. Great bands don't quit easily. Cheap Trick kept recording, kept touring through the mid-80s, kept searching for the sound that would reconnect them with the mainstream. And then, against the odds, they found a way back. Tom Petersson rejoined in 1987. The classic lineup restored. Whatever wounds had driven him out were, at least publicly, healed. And the timing was perfect. Lap of Luxury dropped in 1988. And with it, The Flame. #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their biggest chart hit ever, bigger than anything from the Budokan era. Don't Be Cruel also hit. Cheap Trick was back on mainstream radio, back in heavy rotation, back in the conversation. For fans who'd never stopped believing, it felt like justice. A moment of real, genuine triumph. But the story wasn't over. Because the comeback came with an asterisk that would quietly haunt their legacy for years. Here's the thing about The Flame. Cheap Trick didn't write it. Neither did they write several other key tracks on Lap of Luxury. The comeback was built significantly on outside songwriters, professional hitmakers brought in to give the band the commercial sound the label wanted. And that matters. Because Cheap Trick's entire identity had been built on a specific proposition, Nielsen and Petersson as songwriters. Surrender. I Want You to Want Me. Dream Police. Songs that sounded like nobody else. Weird, irreplaceable others. The Flame was a beautifully produced power ballad. It was also a song that could have belonged to almost any 1980s rock act. The line between Cheap Trick using outside material and Cheap Trick becoming a vehicle for outside material felt uncomfortably thin. Some fans felt the band had traded their creative soul for a chart position. The tension between artistic identity and commercial survival, building since the early 80s, had never been more visible. Then grunge hit. Nirvana. Pearl Jam. 1991. And here's the brutal irony. Kurt Cobain had cited Cheap Trick as an influence. The band that did more than anyone to bury Cheap Trick commercially had been shaped by them. The pupils had slain the teachers. Sales fell again. The band shifted to touring. To being, in the industry's cold language, a nostalgia act, beloved, reliably entertaining, living off the Budokan catalog. And then in 2010, the wound that hasn't entirely healed. Bun Carlos stopped touring with the band. The original drummer. Deadpan genius. One of the 4 people who were Cheap Trick, quietly sidelined. Rick Nielsen's son, Dax Nielsen, took his place behind the kit. Carlos remained a member on paper for a while, but he wasn't on stage. Wasn't on the road. The details are murky. What isn't murky is how it felt to fans. Like the last piece of the original puzzle being removed without ceremony, without acknowledgement. Like the band they loved had finally, fully become something else. Decades after Budokan, the battle had become about legacy itself. About who gets to stand on stage under the name. About whether the band the world fell in love with in Tokyo in 1978 still meaningfully exists at all. 2016, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. The original 4, Zander, Nielsen, Petersson, Carlos, stood together on that stage. Whatever the tensions backstage, whatever complicated feelings existed between them, they accepted the recognition their catalog had always deserved. One Night of Grace. I Want You to Want Me remains one of the most recognizable songs in rock history, 2 notes in and everyone in the room knows it. Budokan still ranks among the greatest live albums ever recorded. The catalog streams constantly. The influence runs deep, through Nirvana, through the entire power pop lineage they helped create. Rick Nielsen is still out there with his bizarre guitars. The band still tours. New music still comes. But Bun Carlos is not behind that drum kit. And for a generation of fans, that absence is a wound that never fully closed. Cheap Trick's story is ultimately about chemistry, the specific, unrepeatable alchemy of 4 particular people, and what happens when the music industry slowly, methodically dismantles it. A band that was brilliant on their own terms and was never fully allowed to succeed on those terms in their own country. Who had to fly to Japan to find the audience that truly got them. Who came home to find the industry always wanted something slightly different from what they actually were. 20 million records. The blueprint for power pop. A live album for the ages. Recorded in Tokyo. By 4 kids from Rockford, Illinois. The dream was real. The glory was real. And the slow unraveling of the lineup, of the identity, of the brotherhood, was just as real. Were you there for the Budokan era? Did you grow up on Surrender and I Want You to Want Me? And what do you think about Bun Carlos? Did the band betray one of their own? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, because the next one is coming, and you don't want to miss it.